It's zombie time.
Zombie time.
With America's most nocturnal podcast, The Pod People. I'm Matisse Van Rossum. I'm looking for a caped-up shawty.
I'm Ben Sheets, but you can call me Benj.
Damn, you almost did a spit take there, T. So that was pretty funny, but hello, and I'm Cleveland Mosier, but today I'm Barbaroy Slim.
We're the Barba Boys.
The Barba Boys.
The Barba Boys.
The Barbaroy Boys.
Well, you might not have believed it was possible, but it's time for another anime episode.
Hell yes.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as I'm here, they're going to come up every
It's
now and
like
then.
always-
the annual anime episode.
Yeah, we do like about one a
We
year.
do like
and,
we get like one a year, and this one comes courtesy of Cleveland,
of course.
Who
surprise.
surprise, surprise, who has chosen Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust.
Hell yeah.
The sequel, it feels more like a soft reboot of the original Vampire Hunter
Yeah.
D that we talked about a couple of
Sort
years
of
ago.
reimagining.
Yeah, the cool thing about like the whole Vampire Hunter D story is he's essentially like a lone writer. He's a Clint Eastwood wanderer character. So you can just do like, you know, one film that sort of acts as like a vignette of his story. Like, you know,
It's Mad Max.
He wanders into a different town. Yeah, exactly. Mad Max does the same thing. It's a tale as old as time. This
is only a sequel in the sense that it was made after the original one.
Yeah.
It was made about 15 years.
Yes,
after
this
the
came out in
roughly.
the year 2000.
I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, as good as the animation was, that they were animating it for that entire 15 years. Like, good God, it's gorgeous to look at.
Well, yeah, we might as well dive right in and get
Let's
that right out of the way, is that, holy shit, this movie looks so much better than the original.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like not even and like it's almost unfair to compare it to the original. Just like on its own, this movie looks fucking phenomenal.
Yes.
Like you can put this film next to Akira, you can put it next to like any of the greats. But I'm a little surprised saying that. I knew it was going to be better than the original, but
Yeah.
frankly, the original has some really cool concepts and looks neat, but is really cheap. Here, no stops are pulled. It's fucking gorgeous front to back.
You know, this is made with a larger budget, obviously.
Obviously.
By the production company Madhouse, who, you know, also did Paprika and
My favorite.
Perfect Blue.
Toshi
And, you know,
Kon's.
the director of this
Toshi.
is kind of well known. He directed Ninja Scroll. I don't know if
shit.
you guys have...
way.
I've
he
never
also-
seen Ninja Scroll, but I've heard very good things.
Yeah, he also directed
ago.
one of the segments
Incredible.
from The Animatrix and that movie Neo Tokyo. And he did one of the Batman Gotham Knight, I think.
Really? I'd be curious to see
I'd have to
that. Damn. I mean, he does
double
flowing
check.
capes really well, so I'm sure it's
Yeah,
dope.
man, this is a movie full of people in voluptuous flowing capes.
Yeah.
Whose cape is bigger? Stay tuned to find out.
Well, we may never know.
That's true. They kind of exchange in size
Yeah.
constantly.
Well,
Which is great.
I mean, this is a rare case where we watch an anime film that I actually really like. You know, anime's not really my thing, but I appreciate a good film when it's made. I do love Akira and Ghost in the Shell, and you know the classics, the good ones. And you know, I was not at all hot on the original Vampire Hunter D. Like, it had some fun stuff to clown on, but I thought it was pretty shitty. And you know, I was expecting better on this one, because I know, Ben, you said you had seen this one before,
Yeah.
and that it was good.
We'll get into that for sure.
But man, it was so much better than I was anticipating.
Yeah, well, growing up, I had seen this one a few times, and when we originally covered the first one, my frame of reference was this, and I thought we were watching this one,
Yeah.
not realizing I had them mixed up.
Can
so.
we backtrack a little bit? I kind of want to know, how did you come across it originally when you were a kid? Because I'm always fascinated by, like, because, like, in the 80s, like, it was kind of hard to get hold of anime. you know? And so it's like up through the 90s and like into the early aughts, like I'm always curious about like how like people like encountered
it was in the animated movie section of
like Blockbuster?
Family Video or Blockbuster.
Oh, Family Video.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. So you'd like rent it a couple of times. And you're like, I want to get this one again.
Yeah.
You know, I really like chocolate. I want that again.
I'm assuming the one you had access to is probably the American dub.
Yeah.
Sensibly.
Which is honestly, from my memory, a pretty good dub altogether. Mm-hmm. What's interesting is we watched the Japanese dub this time, but with subtitles that were clearly for the English version.
Yes.
And it seems like there's a lot more dialogue in the English version.
Yeah, the English version, like, it seems like the script, like, writers and translators were a lot less confident in just letting the visuals tell the story. And I really appreciated that about, like, the Japanese, like, original dub. Because, like, there's just, like, moments where you just get to, like, look at the ambient, like, wasteland or old ancient buildings and things.
And like, there'll be subtitles.
Subtitles will be playing out like characters are talking over it all. And instead we just get to kind of bask in, like, the ambience and the music is really good over the top of it. So it's, like, the blowing wind and, like, maybe, like, soft synths or choral, like, kind of oohing in the background as the characters stand there and we take it in with them.
Yeah.
And it's so much better for it.
Yeah, there was none of that additional dialogue that we got through the subtitles that I thought was necessary.
None.
No.
Yeah, like, all of it was stuff that you could just take in by watching.
Yeah.
You really felt like or at least I really felt like whoever was translating it was watching it being like, this is really esoteric. I need to insert as much dialogue as possible. Mm-hmm. And they tried way too hard at that. Like, to just, like, insert as much additional exposition into it. Because, like, the subtitles were just constantly popping up, like, in between. And again, like, whenever, like, the dialogue was actually, like, paired with the subtitles, it was all you really needed. To get by. Like again, like, none of the, like, just an incredible example of, like, trimming the fat in reverse. You know, like the whoever, like, went to translate it just, like, added a bunch of, like, additional fat that wasn't necessary.
Well, it's interesting.
You'd have that pacing.
What's interesting about it to me too is that, like, a lot of anime I find to be, like, overly talky.
Yeah.
And
verbose.
Yeah, like, it seems like the Japanese in their filmmaking style kind of do that a lot. And so it was interesting to see in this case where the actual, like, Japanese audio version has much less dialogue than the than the English dub did.
Well, that's why, like, I tend to, like, really gravitate towards, like, Onibaba and any of, like, Kurosawa's works do a beautiful job of just letting the visuals tell the story. Look at Yojimbo, right? Like, the most iconic sequences are, like, just him walking, you know, towards the enemy, or, like, him sitting in these buildings. And, like, just the ambient scenery of, like, how everyone is gathered and where tells you everything you need to know.
I think the problem is more general than just to film translators. I think, like, an inconfident translator will try to be as descriptive as possible in hopes that nothing at all is lost in translation, where, like, a more confident, experienced translator will know that, like, sometimes less is more. You know,
I think that this is not limited to translation. I think this just applies to writing in general, and music, and visual art as well. I know, like, when I was younger, and painting, I would try and cram as much information visually into a piece as I could to make it have more, you know? And it's taken me years, and I'm still learning this lesson. I'll learn this lesson until I die. But it's taken me years to learn to allow for that negative space to take over. And to just let people bask in the simplicity. And it's why we gravitate towards, like, animated films or, you know, simplistic styles in games, or, you know, you name it. Because, like, it's so much easier to breathe and to take it in. Simplicity can be really beautiful. Minimalism as well can be very well used.
Well, and I think when it relates to a film like this, too, the story really should be kind of secondary.
Yes.
Because, like, that's not, like, the strong suit of this film by any means,
or the series, really,
or the series. Well, yeah, I mean, I've only seen this one in the original one.
Well,
but, but I mean, yeah, this is not something that you watch for like the really engaging story. It's for a series of extremely cool set pieces animated masterfully.
Well, and it's that fear of trying to fill in the gaps that I think actually can make it worse too. Because when you try to like add in as much extraneous content as you can, or to really just like make sure you're covering all your corners, what ends up happening is you overwhelm. Like, yeah, this is a very esoteric style. It's a lot of genres sort of pooled together, pretty seamlessly though. I gotta say, like you really fall into the world and just get to enjoy it
visually and world building wise. Yeah, absolutely.
But it is esoteric, and throwing dialogue all over the top of it is more overwhelming than anything else, I think. And you see that in like poor writing as well, where it's like, oh, we need to convey this thing. Let me just give you like 7 paragraphs of this so that you can understand it. And it's like, but that doesn't help me understand it. Now I have to look at all of this information or listen to all this information and also take in the esoteric stuff. And it's like, you need to like let the esoteric stuff breathe, I think.
Yeah, well, I think that's the main problem I had with the original one that's kind of solved in this one is the original one kind of lacked a clarity of purpose. And I think part of that is because it's so esoteric that they, like you said, overload you, and like it goes all over the place in so many different directions, and it doesn't feel like it has a clear through line, where this one has a very simple story. You know, the story is very thin, but there is a central narrative running throughout.
Yeah, this is like a quest film, it's like a journey, so it makes sense to move from like one set piece to the next. Whereas like the first one, a big problem that I had with the first one, in sort of the same vein that you're talking about, is that like structurally it's all over the place, and there are just like random things thrown in all the time that don't really fit in with what's going on, and then are like forgotten. Like the first time he goes to like the main bad guy's castle in the original one, like 30 minutes in, it's just like here's a big monster that throws rocks at him. Here's a ghost panther. Here's a little floating eyeball creature. Here's a snake. And it's like each one of these things is just like thrown out of nowhere and then immediately discarded. And it's like, okay, it's kind of fun, I guess, but like it doesn't feel like thought out. Whereas in this movie, it's like, okay, they're moving from one location to the next, like on this journey. So that gives you your opportunity for like new encounters with like cool new bad guys and stuff along the way to happen. It feels like an odyssey instead of just throwing all of that shit together and then like the one, like the vampire guy's daughter in the first one, like betraying him and then not, and then yes again, and like nobody can decide what the fuck their motivation is.
The twists and turns.
And all of that is thankfully mercifully gone from this one. It's so much more simple, but also like it has some surprisingly like well-rounded characters with complex motivations. And, it doesn't feel the need to say too much with any of these things, but it just, like, tells a solid, simple story. My biggest problem with this movie overall is I feel like it gets bogged down in the third act with, like, too much talky stuff. Yeah. And it's not terrible. Like, it's very watchable, but it does start to feel its length a little bit around that time.
Yeah. I'm with it.
Even in those cases, like, the animation and the setting is so cool. Like, at least you're, like, visually engaged, even if I don't necessarily care about some of the intricacies of a human woman loving a vampire,
I have a question for you guys.
Sure.
Have either of y'all watched any of the Netflix Castlevania series?
No, I've heard it's really good though.
So
I
I've watched,
watched
watch
the
much
first
anime.
episode. I
Okay.
thought it was pretty good.
I watched like 2 or 3 of it, and then frankly got kind of bored of it. And like, this is what it wants to be. Like, I compare that in my mind, like the quality of animation and the level of it, and it's like, I'm sorry, but like you can't even begin to compare.
This is
Like,
just
it's-
sci-fi Castlevania.
Yeah, this is, and it's so much cooler than just regular Castlevania, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, you get a little bit of everything, and it somehow in this works. It's hokey, like 70s sci-fi in the original one is sort of. I made a lot of comparisons to like Roger Dean's art or Flash Gordon, and those are works that were also like kind of young when it comes to like how to tell narrative in sci-fi and how to do like that sort of storytelling. But here, it's matured so beautifully, you know, like it's the next logical leap. And it feels like how like 80s and 90s good 80s and 90s sci-fi reads, with those like shoulders to stand on. But I mean, credit to the original, like, because that's where we came from.
Yeah.
Your point about the and then stuff in the original, like, what's so cool is this movie has stuff just as weird as Ghost Panthers.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just as weird. But
But it feels less out of place in this movie somehow, you
right?
know.
Like, it does a really hard job, which is like presenting you with these weird, fantastic creatures, people, events, settings in a way that feels organic, that allows you to like accept it and enjoy it. And that's hard to do.
Yeah.
And it
Clearly,
truly is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you compare.
Yeah.
And I respect the shit out of it. I guess we've talked about how simple the plot is. Should we just kind of like break down it front to back?
Sure.
Yeah. Basically, Vampire Hunter D, who is a Dampier, which is a half human, half vampire. He's Blade.
Basically. Yeah.
He's anime Daywalker. He gets hired by a rich man whose daughter has been kidnapped by a vampire, Meyer Link.
That's his name.
That's
his name
his
is
name.
Mir Link.
Yes.
And
He come to town. Come to take.
I guess he's German, like all other
yeah, like
vampires.
all other vampires. All vampires are German. But yeah, he's kidnapped this young woman, and they hire D to hunt, chase him down and get her back. And then there's also another team of unrelated vampire hunters who are also chasing them down as well. And that's sort of the gist of the story. And the chase leads to, all of these cool fight scenes with cool villains, with cool future vampire powers and shit.
Yep.
And that's basically it.
I love it too, because it is a simple story of like trying. It starts out framed as like a simple story of like save the princess, right?
Yeah.
Like the girl has been taken. We hear from the father that the girl has been taken and he has to rescue her, and we find out around the midpoint of the film that she wants to go.
She hasn't been kidnapped. She's run away.
Exactly.
With
And-
her vampire lover.
And I fucking love that. Like, it's like, cool. She has her own agency. Like, she wants to be there. And
And the vampire is not just, like, unambiguously evil. He's complex. He's a monster, but he loves a human.
and he knows
you
he's
know.
a monster, and he's trying to not be a monster for her.
Yeah, he wants her to stay human. He doesn't want her to turn. He doesn't
Yeah.
want to turn
Yeah.
her into
And she
a
does.
vampire.
She's like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
my neck's ready to go. Let's do this. And he's like,
He's like, no, the
You don't
curse.
get it. It sucks. Like, you don't
the
want to live
curse.
forever. It's
It
bad.
blows.
Yeah.
And I like, you don't want to thirst for blood. You don't want to be a bad person. And I love that shit. Like, and frankly, is it the deepest shit I've ever like encountered? No, sure. And I've seen it before. It's Beauty and the Beast. It's whatever else.
No, but it's
just what an action
Yes.
series needs.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the right amount of like mud in the water, just the right amount of complexity to, give you enough to like latch onto to enjoy as we kick some vampire monster ass.
It's just enough to keep the characters from being two-dimensional. And it's just enough to make it be like, okay, well, is D really the good guy here, And that is enough to make it interesting. And then, then there's fucking cool fight scenes and shit. It's zombie time.
It's zombie time. Yeah, it's a great moment. So D, he goes to settlement, he gets the gig, and he heads out. To which we then cut to an abandoned town where they this fucking awesome train car. Just armored vehicle.
Yeah.
This shit looks like it drove right out of Warhammer. There's a lot of that in this.
Has a crucifix floodlight on the front of it.
The peeper in the front of it is in a cross shape. Yeah, I love it. The floodlights they're closed at first. They're shuttered at first, and then when they flick open, you see that the light's been behind her in a cross shape. It's so fucking
really
great.
Cool.
Yeah, this is our introduction to the other team of vampire hunters, Borgoff and his gang. They get swarmed by a bunch of vampires.
Yeah,
I like
ghouls.
I mean, they look like vampires. They got vampire fangs. They got the glowing red eyes and the claws and shit and whatever. Yeah. But, so they're being chased by a swarm of that, and then they decide to stop and fight, and that's when we get Borgoff saying the line, "It's zombie time," which is confusing because I didn't think they were zombies. I thought they were vampires, but whatever.
Well, it's so funny because
it's very cool.
There's a ton of subtitles before it, but we don't really get any dialogue in the Japanese dub.
Yeah,
and then out of nowhere,
the first line that's actually in the Japanese dialogue is "It's zombie time,"
which, let's be real, is all you fucking need.
Exactly. Yeah. None of that other shit is necessary. It is zombie time.
Yeah, because like the American version, like it's pretty clear, like that it's all of the characters in the car, like just about get a line in before we see them. And instead, like in the Japanese version, the one guy comes out and says it's zombie time. They get attacked. And the other characters are introduced through action, and they all leap out of the car and do different things.
Through their weapons.
Yeah, and like that's a way better way to get to know them in this kind of series. Like, so we want to see them in combat. Like,
so we've got Borgoff. He's the leader. Yeah. He's got a wrist-mounted crossbow. His brother, Nort.
Sure.
I think Nort.
It's something like Nort.
I want to say that it's Nort. Who,
Nort, Bunko, and Steve.
Nort has a giant hammer that just has a sharpened stake point on one end.
It's a giant stake hammer.
Which is fucking cool.
They're fucking rules.
Nolt. That's it, not Nort. Nolt.
It's the same.
There's the Blade Master
Kyle. Which is very it's very funny because like with the Japanese dub, his name is Kylie.
Yeah.
There's Layla, is that right?
Yep.
Who ends up being a pretty important character. She has
I love her aesthetic.
As we pointed out, she has the haircut of the Major from Ghost in the Shell, but blonde. She has the same
but
haircut.
It's identical with like it's like hair that sideburns.
Yeah.
Kind of look. Yeah, but, I love it.
And she's wearing a jacket that is not far removed from Kaneda's jacket in Akira, the red jacket with the shoulder pads.
And she's riding around on her motorcycle, quote unquote.
It's a unibike.
Yeah. It's a unibike. It's got one big wheel.
And it looks cool. It doesn't look dumb. And what's neat is, when did this come out? Like
2000.
2000, right on the nose. Okay, yeah. Like, another decade or two, like, this would actually be invented. Like, the unibike is a thing. You wouldn't catch me dead on one, but they do exist.
I have seen a number of people rolling around on, like, those little one-wheeled skateboard thing. They're not skateboard, they're like hoverboards.
But, like, basically the exact same design. Like, you get on it like a motorcycle, and it's got one wheel on it, which is dumb, like, honestly, but like in a sci-fi environment, it's like, okay, it's got gyros in it, it's got whatever, it's big and bulky, it looks like a big old VHS player that's a motorcycle. It looks fun.
Well, and they've got one. There's one more member of their team, Grove, who is like sickly and ill. He has to like stay inside the vehicle. He's hooked up to a bunch of machines and stuff. But his power is my favorite. Is he injects himself with like some glowing blue potion or whatever. Compound V, and it allows him to astral project a version of himself as Laser Christ, which basically just flies around with his arms out, just like firing lasers.
Just looking cool as shit.
Yeah.
Not unlike Mother from Raised by Wolves.
Yeah, kind of.
Similar kind of vibes. Laser Christ is my favorite. Is my favorite part of this movie, though.
Yeah. Well, it's great too. I really like how they introduce it. It's something I tend to love about, like, frankly, even bad like Shonen Jumpy anime can do this really well. Where, like, frankly, it's basically all that Shonen Jumpy anime has going for it, which is they introduce you with a cool character. They've got a weird look, and you get to slowly figure out and kind of guess at or learn what their weird ability does and means. And this movie introduces all those things very well, and frankly more tastefully than like your Soul Eaters and whatever else bullshit. You know, like literally pick an anime, they all do it. Because like we see him get injected, and they're like, "Yo, like you need to be careful with yourself." And it's like, okay, this could be a Hulk serum, this could be whatever. And then we cut away, we cut outside, and the spectral version of himself appears as like a Deus Ex Machina. But it's like him and glowing, so you think it's like him super powered or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it gets like defeated, and it cuts back to him still lying in the bed. So you kind of have to piece it together yourself. It's like, oh, I guess he's like astral projecting or whatever. That's neat.
And presumably too, this power is like what is making him sick. Like it's like sapping his strength, because he comes back and becomes Laser Christ at the end to kill Vampire Borgoff.
Yep.
And that effort kills him at last.
Yeah, which is cool.
His final sacrifice to save Layla.
Like as extreme as this world is, as like high magic as it is, or high tech.
Yeah.
You know, but in both respects. There are still laws and rules.
Yeah, there's
we
an
don't see all of them, but we get a
logic
sense.
there. Yeah.
That like there are things in place. There are like levels of power that are shown and displayed, and I love that shit. And that's usually enough for me to like get by in like high fantasy or high tech.
As long as it feels like it exists in its own world, like it's believable in the context of its own world, that's all that matters.
Yes, exactly.
That, you know, and you don't need like full explanations for everything. It's like it just has to make sense for the world that it exists in. And some people still fail to do that wildly. Like that should be the easiest thing in the world. But yeah, well, I mean, this world is also just very cool. Like there is definitely some like Warhammer analog, especially like the castle at the end is like very fucking Warhammery. Like the whole techno gothic thing is just fucking cool.
Yeah,
dude, it fucking rules.
All the fucking, and this is the same in the first one too. But like the horses are all like cyber horses.
Yeah, it rules. Red glowing eyes.
Yeah, fucking
those Roger Dean horses. Yeah,
Meyer Link. His carriage is like the carriage itself is like very like Victorian Gothic looking, but it's got this team of like fucking robo horses with like just a straight red line across their eyes, like
they have like the Cylon eyes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's dope too because like
awesome.
the carriage is like triple plated, like something out of Berserk. Like, it's so fucking cool, man.
I love the very beginning.
So hard to animate too.
The very beginning of the film, where like the opening shot starts with like the big fucking castle, the Castlevania castle, and then it like pulls back and like you see the town, and there's just like a bajillion crucifixes and stuff like on all the roofs facing the castle. And then when like the carriage is like galloping through the street, like all of the crosses on the the roof like bend and like contort and shit as
almost
it's
like
going
a withering
by.
plant.
Yeah, it's so well. They literally show it alongside like withering
Roses,
plants,
yeah.
like as it passes, which is pretty funny because like that character turns out to like not be, you know, like that evil. Like he's doing what he's doing for love, but like they introduce him as like the most evil, like corrupting. Like even his presence withers the plants and bends the crucifixes.
Well,
and
it
stuff.
does something else
it's
too.
a turn, you know, like
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Is like, well, it implies, and again, it doesn't need to say it, but it implies that she kind of turned him to good. You know, like he was possibly like a pretty evil vampire lord leading up to that, and like through love, she's been able to like change him.
Well, doesn't he have a line at the end, like towards the end, where he said he like never killed? Or something like that.
yeah.
Well, he wasn't putting out that energy.
So, no, that's what I'm saying.
You're right.
That's what I'm saying.
But the other, the other cool thing is not only does he do that, he enters the room, and I hadn't seen this before, like in a vampire story, and I thought it was so fucking neat in the intro. Like he's withering the crosses, and we don't see him, but like the crosses are withering, the chariot is riding up, and then the window cracks and closes. We don't see anyone enter, and then the roses wither as well, and then the mirror itself cracks. And I thought that was so fucking cool because, like, yeah, there's the whole thing where like vampires can't be seen in mirrors, but the idea of like a mirror not only refusing to show a vampire, but just like being unable to like exist in its presence. You know, like this vampire is so strong that he doesn't just not show up in mirrors; he just cracks them when they're around him. I thought that was fucking cool.
Yeah.
Well, then there's a scene way later where they're like standing right in front of a mirror, looking.
He's just trying to not crack it. He has that power. He can control it. You know. Yeah.
Well, it's cool. That shot is cool too because like it's you're seeing like her on the bed through the mirror, and you see her like get lifted up into the air and move.
with all the drapery of like the sheets and her dress.
And then like he passes in front of the camera, and you get like the flowing of the cloak as he goes through. It's it's just very cool like directing decisions in how a lot of this stuff is presented visually.
That's the thing of it for me too. Like talking about like the drapery and the cloth and all these things is like from a fine art background that I come from, like a classical art and like Italian Renaissance background. Like this shit is mad impressive. Like this is fine art. Like I'm sorry, but like you can put these visuals. I don't care that there are laser crosses and shit in here. At the end of the day, technically, it belongs in a museum. Like in the same capacity.
You saying laser crosses don't belong in a museum?
Hell no, they're fucking cool as shit. But like, and it's what I particularly love about like my own job and the rest is that like is bringing that level of like artistry into silly shit like this. It's about laser vampires and like Warhammer 40K shit, but it's so technically well made. I love it. I love it so much. I just want to live in
it's
this
just
world,
wild.
but not really.
It's just wild. Like visually, like no corners are cut in this thing, and it's just such a stark contrast to the original. That is just like, I mean, I know it's a large difference in budget, but the original we were talking about stuff with like repeated shots, like looped frames to like draw stuff out, just like
they had the total anime, just abstract backgrounds,
yeah, just and there is a time difference, an era difference as well, and like what stuff is popular visually and so on and so forth. But just like the first one, I think I said that it feels cheap, which it kind of was, and like this one just does not. It's worlds different. Like every single shot of this film, no matter how short, is like fully rendered, just like absolutely beautifully.
What's so interesting about that shift to me is it still maintains kind of the same tone where it doesn't feel too directly wink wink nudge nudge campy. Like it has a self-seriousness to it that the original also kind of had, but because they have the imagery in this one to back it up, it works.
The first one is much goofier, like not necessarily self-aware, but like much campier, and this one has some of that too, but it definitely it makes you take it more seriously.
Yeah,
I think.
just because the artistry is
so
there.
good.
Yeah, when like all of those like just outrageously like baroquely like stemming arches, are coming off of like every object. Even the like from the castle, like it has those incredible flying buttresses that are like fully ornamented with like all these little Gothic details, to the casket that Camilla is in, right? Like it has these like incredible like they're almost like Art Nouveau like swoops that go like, because it's on like a platform, like stair-stepped platform, and there are these like swooped sort of like arches that are holding it in place. They go from all the way to the ground, all the way up to it. Like, and it's just this beautiful imagery. I was just constantly like enamored by it. Like, there's these shots of like their swords, and they're all fully ornamented and shit. And his hand has like all these cool like wrinkles in its eyes and shit.
Yeah,
like,
his little
But I love it.
fucking
It's so much easier to buy now.
his little face hand. Yeah, it is much easier to buy in this movie.
Yeah. And it's the wrinkles, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Like, it's that extra detail where it just makes it so much easier to believe.
Well, also in this one, too, they introduce it much earlier on in a way that's, like, much more natural, I guess, like, less jarring. It's like, in the original, it's like, what the fuck is it? Like, the first time you see the little face on his hand, it's like, what the fuck is this? It's like 40 minutes into the movie. What's going on? Yeah. And this movie doesn't do anything more than the first one does to like explain what the deal with his little face hand is.
Actually, yeah.
Like it does, like we still don't know anything about it, but it's much easier to buy in this one.
Yeah.
And it serves a more interesting purpose, I think, where like the little hand face sort of serves as not necessarily Dee's inner monologue, but sort of like an outer monologue.
Well, yeah, it is. It's an inner outer monologue.
It's very. It reminded me a lot in this one of Afro Samurai, where you've got like Afro, who's like the silent Clint Eastwood style protagonist who rarely talks, but then you've got the ninja sidekick character who doesn't like fight or anything, but is like constantly talking to sort of like provide the outer monologue. Yeah. It's like this feels very much like that. Afro Samurai rules, man.
It does, man. I mean, yeah, like Samuel Jackson voices Afro, Ron Perlman's the villain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It fucking slaps.
Cleve, I have a question for you. So
lay it on me.
Considering this movie, is kind of a reimagining 15 years later, like a sort of requel of sorts to something where the source material had potential but just could not deliver on the potential. What's another sort of series or movie, anime or Western animation that you'd like to see that has that sort of potential?
My thought is I have a couple, one of which we actually watched on the podcast. I know that it isn't an anime, but it does stem from a manga, and that's Guyver. I would want to see that animated. I think, frankly, it would work better in animation.
Much
better in animation. Though the Sentai is fun. It's hokey and it's fun even when it's gory. It's guys in rubber suits, which I adore. I would also really love to see it animated and taken really seriously, and it would just be much easier to immerse myself in that world and just really get down with that super cool cyborg beetle suit.
That's a good one. That would be really cool.
The other one is something that has been adapted somewhat recently, about 8 or so years ago, and that would be that was adapted well, but it was only a part of the story. That's Blam. If you're looking for like extremely cool sci-fi inspiration, I mean, apart from like Guyver, I would immediately then go to Blam. In some circles, like it's considered like the Silmarillion of manga because it's so vast and high concept that you just couldn't adapt it. You just look at a couple panels from it and you'll see what I mean. If you're looking it up, it's spelled blame, ! Because Japanese translation. But it's pronounced blam. It's supposed to be like a gun going off, like boom, blam, blam. But it's it's Japanese, so like there's a funny kind of translation thing.
Blame.
There. Yeah, it's blame. Anywho, my point is they covered a small bit of it, but like if you look at the illustrations from it, there's just so many cool characters and settings in this just insanely like grim dark cyber future that I would love to see it animated.
Part of the reason I brought up that question was they were originally going to remake Wicked City, which is a really great anime. It's like body horror demons. The narrative itself is pretty shitty, which is why I think it would work in the same way, but they ended up deciding on doing Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust instead, which is interesting, but turned
out very well.
I think it poses an interesting question in that, like, I think there's a lot of like older shitty animations where like you could go back and you could make that better.
Yeah, and in so many ways. Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Wicked City. I was actually going to mention earlier, like we brought up the fact that we kind of cover about one anime a year. 2023, that's just coming. I'm definitely picking Wicked City at some point. If you don't, I will.
I mean, the animation is good.
I've been curious.
The
I've never
narrative
seen it.
is just kind of shitty. But...
Well, it's one of those ones where it's like funny. It's like Dark City in that sense, where it's like I've seen bits of it, and I'm like, yeah, I really want to know what this is about. I know what I've heard. It's not great, but I want to know. I want to.
Dark City is underrated.
Fun, yeah.
Dark City is underrated,
but it's got a lot of problems.
It has problems,
but it does rule. I'm really glad we watched it.
But it's a good movie, and I'm pretty sure we all rated it fairly positively.
Yeah, it's a fun movie. I love being Mr. Knowledgeable, but I might know maybe more about anime in some sects than either of you. Not entirely though. I mean, you know, Playman, but like
a little bit.
Yeah, my knowledge is not that deep. There is so much.
That way lies madness.
Yeah, frankly, like
honestly,
that's probably for the best. Yeah,
that way lies madness.
I try to be. I'm very careful about how often I dip my toes into the water.
Yeah, that's very, very much where I am. That's very, very much where I am.
Well, it's just like the amount of anime out there is just fucking staggering. Like, you compare it to like the whole of Western animation. And, like, Western animation as a whole is probably, like, 3% in comparison.
Yeah, dude. It's insane.
Yeah. And there have been a lot of anime where I've, like, started and then dipped out. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I mean,
who's got time for
that's
that?
the reason I don't really...
You can clock it pretty quick whether, like, a series is worth your time. Well, I say that, but Trigun, I misjudged, apparently. I really need to go back and watch Trigun because I started it and was like, it's just a little bit too much chibi for me. And everyone I talk to always says, like, oh no, Trigun is amazing. Like,
apparently it's coming back. I think I saw something about that. Like this week that Trigun's coming back. I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah.
I don't know shit about Trigun.
Yeah, apparently the whole deal is like the character is like lighthearted and comical at some point, and then apparently there's like some sort of spoilers for Trigun, I guess, like planetary genocide or something, and he gets like super grimdark, and like suddenly the series takes like a huge like left turn.
That is an escalation.
Yeah, and I kind of want to see it for that. And I didn't know that going in, so I was like, oh, who's this chibi character? I don't want to watch a whole series of this guy. I tuned out. And so, like, but, like, the idea of him being all kind of cutesy and fun and then just, like, suddenly coming around and being like, no, like, you killed an entire planet of my people or something. I'm like, okay.
I think, honestly, that's the thing that keeps me away from anime for the most part and has kept me away completely in the past is, like, just, like, the staggering amount of quantity and, like, such a low batting average.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's way more bad anime than good anime out there.
If it's Shonen Jump, it's a hard sell for me. Like, just in general. Like, I tend to shy away. There's a few exceptions, notably, of course, this is some normie shit, but, like, Death Note is
Death Note rules.
Death Note is one of the rare
Death Note
exceptions.
is good. Death Note's one of the ones that I like.
Yeah, it had a good script, and it was only given 2 seasons, and it's blessedly short.
Season 2 has a handful of like really rough parts. Though.
It does, but like, thank God it's only 2 seasons.
Season 2 is messy.
Yeah, it's not like 8,000 episodes that get like confused and lost, like your Naruto's or your Bleaches or whatever else, or your One Pieces that are somehow still going, or your Soul Eaters, your Hunter Hunters, your et ceteras. Like, they're all Like any one of those I've tried and I've been failed. Everyone I just mentioned, I have watched some amount of and have just immediately tuned out. Except for One Piece, I've watched like an episode of it and was like, this is very much not for me.
When I was a
You
kid,
saved yourself 1,000 episodes.
Yeah, could you imagine?
when I was a kid, I had a
podcast.
Shonen Jump subscription. I got like the fucking magazine sent to me every month,
dude.
So like I've read a lot of those mangas. And, I mean, I grew out of that shit by the time I was, like, 12 or 13.
This is going to be a very telling question.
Yeah.
Did either of you have the Naruto headband?
Absolutely not.
Okay,
but no, here's the thing.
But Cleveland.
Can I at least say it?
Yes.
Can I be the one? I'll out myself.
You may.
Okay. So, I was going through and I was just mentioning how I never finished Naruto. I never finished, your Fables or your Seven Deadly Sins or and I've started all of these, your Hunter x Hunters. I tried with all of them and I dipped out because like, okay, this isn't going anywhere. It's I'm wasting my time. The animation is okay. Bleach, I did the same thing. I got pretty far into it, but when it first came out, I was in high school, to date myself a little bit. I was a wee lad, and I got pretty into it, and there was this one character who was, like, affectionately referred to as Hat and Clogs, and he's got this, like, hat with, like, green and white stripes on it, and I thought
Bucket hat.
Yeah, and I thought it was, like, the coolest hat, and I did get it. I did wear it. I still have it somewhere. I need to find it. It's an all right hat.
It was like your iconic hat for like a
because the character has like shoulder
years at least.
Because the character has like kind of fluffy shoulder level blonde hair, which I have. So like I was like, oh shit, it's like it's an anime character I can relate with. I want the hat. So I got the hat, and it was a good hat, and I wore it. Like outside of the outright weebiness of it, like. It was a comfy hat, and I wore it a lot, and it was really cringy, and I was a cringy teenager, so I wore that shit everywhere.
I don't want to out my brother too much, but he did have a Naruto headband.
He doesn't listen to this podcast, does he?
He does sometimes.
Does he? Okay.
Yeah, I hope he's listening.
You know what?
Joseph outed.
He was happy with his decision at the time, so
sure.
I can't judge. I had a fucking Bleach hat. Yeah, I can't judge. We grow.
Side question.
Yeah, those people.
At your high school, were there any weeb kids that ran with their hands behind their back?
So many.
Naruto run?
It was an epidemic.
I used to be... There's no way he'd ever listen to the podcast, but I'm still not going to name him. But
no, it's not nice to.
I did have a friend in like 4th and 5th grade who was absolutely the friend. The only reason I was friends with him is because his family was rich.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. And he had like video games and stuff that I didn't have.
Sure.
And he was a fucking asshole.
He was mean. He was mean to you,
dude. He was
mean to me.
He was mean to everybody. He was a fucking asshole. But he was one of those people who did Naruto run everywhere. He would Naruto run between classes because we the middle school was an outdoor middle school, so he would just like walk out of the classroom, just immediately bend over, arms out behind his back, just take off to whatever his next class was. And I did make fun of him for it, and he's like, no dude, it makes you more aerodynamic.
That's incredible.
I just imagine like when you say like, oh, it makes you more aerodynamic, like him being in like a wind tunnel and being measured by like top military scientists and shit.
My God, he's reaching speeds unheard of. Yeah. He's so aerodynamic.
This 13-year-old is so fast, you won't believe it. Oh my God. Yeah.
It was funny too because a lot of times, like when he's going between classes, he had to like carry his books and stuff. So if he was carrying his books, like if he had too many, he could only do one arm behind his back.
He's a little faster.
Yeah, a little bit faster. If he was just carrying like one or two binders, he would just like hold that in his hand as he's holding it behind his back.
I have a side story about that.
Go for it.
There was always those couple of kids in your high school that had the rolly backpacks.
Oh yeah,
right?
Sure.
There was a crossover there.
Rolly backpack
and there was
Naruto
one
running?
dude that had a rolly backpack and tried to Naruto run.
Would it ever like go sideways?
Yeah. eventually.
Yeah, if you took one of those things faster than like a power walk, it would start like madly.
You had to clear the way for him.
Oh god!
If he was coming, you didn't want to get hit.
Yeah.
You gotta make way for the Naruto weeb.
That's so good.
Oh yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. No, I used to take Kung Fu. I know it's just like more Chinese in origin, but like I used to take Kung Fu and stuff. I was super into that.
I took Taekwondo for a little while.
Yeah, I also took Taekwondo for a bit. Did a little bit of both.
Didn't make it past green belt.
Yeah, I preferred Kung Fu to Taekwondo as good, but we digress. But
Cool.
the point, who fucking cares? But
I really think it's a more efficient fighting style.
yeah, it's so. I'm not gonna weigh in on that in either way for fucking sure.
I really think that Kung Fu is really just more.
See, I studied the blade.
I like the people in the class better, and I liked the Kung Fu just had a little bit more like of a social element to it.
Sure.
You know, there's a little bit more of a lifestyle that comes with it. Like Taekwondo is a little bit more directly. Like you're like, oh, I'm doing it. No one cares.
A little more of a lifestyle.
No. It's true. Like okay, because Kung Fu.
Rewind.
No. Kung Fu is more philosophical than like. I'm doing it to myself.
You are digging yourself into this hole, my man.
But
you are doing this.
Okay, I know that. But like Kung Fu is supposed to be like a regimented thing. It's much more like involved in like a fucking. I'm sorry, there's not a better word than lifestyle for it, but that's the word. Whereas the Taekwondo classes that I took was like purely the martial art aspect of it. You know, is all like we were taught to meditate in Kung Fu. That's literally it. That's all I mean by that. And when you're 12 years old or whatever, being taught how to meditate is very good. It's a healthy practice. You know, just like pick a point on the wall and do a horse stance for a while. It's good for you. I'm going to stop now.
We have so intensely diverted from
Honestly,
talking about
that's
this
okay.
fucking movie.
We took this train right off the
This
cliff.
is the annual anime episode, so it's the one time a year we can have these.
the one time
off
a year we get to
topic.
talk about anime on the podcast, except every 3 or 4 episodes when Cleveland brings it up.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So what?
Damn, it's almost like I animate for a
What
living.
anime
Oh,
is
damn.
Netflix
Crazy,
gonna
right?
ruin next?
Yeah, right? This one.
Ooh.
This
Live
one.
action
Vampire
Vampire Hunter D.
Fun game. All right. So, who do y'all think? The Netflix is doing a live action Vampire Hunter D. Who are they casting?
Oh, okay. Just because
Go
it
for
would
it.
be terrible. They cast Timothy Chalamet as
They would do that. Oh, they would. They would.
I'll see
do
your
it.
Timothy Chalamet and raise you an Ezra Miller. Because it would be the perfectly tone deaf thing for Netflix to do that doesn't make any sense at all and ends up being enormously detrimental.
Okay, so we should probably specify that as of recording, he's still missing.
Cleveland. They're
still missing?
Yes.
Multiple
I didn't know that.
underage women have put a restraining order on him, from what I've heard too.
And apparently they have kidnapped a child too. Something
Apparently,
like that.
Yeah, they've gone missing with a person.
Ezra Miller's reign of terror on Hawaii continues.
Yeah.
And soon to be starring in Netflix's Vampire Hunter D adaptation.
God,
See, I
good.
I want
So
to see
funny.
them pull a past their prime comedic actor for Vampire Hunter D.
Maybe
Just
that's
throw
the
in
villain.
Steve Carell as
my
Vampire Hunter D.
Oh my god.
Holy shit.
Let's put Paul Giamatti as
Unironically, yes.
that would kind of rule.
Let's put Paul Giamatti.
The action
He
scenes
doesn't
would be
look.
awful.
He doesn't look
No.
like the character at all.
Paul Giamatti.
But I think he can really capture the inner turmoil of a dampier.
Oh, see, I was thinking of Paul Giamatti as like the evil vampire that Ezra Miller has to go after.
Oh, see, yeah,
Ooh,
now that's a match made in heaven.
Or like Jim Belushi or someone.
Yeah.
Jim Belushi.
Yeah. There's a John Belushi. Yeah.
John Belushi's dead.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jim Belushi had his resurgence with Twin Peaks.
That's right.
As well as his awesome Twitter account where he talks about weed.
Yeah, he's a weed farmer in like
Yeah.
Oregon now.
Oh, yeah, that's pretty wholesome.
Pretty
Yeah.
sweet. Yeah.
You'll love to
dope.
see it. Shout out to Jim Belushi.
Yeah, come on the podcast, Jim.
Yeah,
we'd
love
love
you.
to have you.
I wanted to bring up the lackeys in some capacity because they're fun. First off, they're introduced by in the slime cave, which is like it's not actually slimy, but like it's full of like weird creatures.
Yeah, the Barbarois. They're like I don't know what they're like an organization of like
Weird creatures.
for hire.
Yeah. They've all come together. They're all weird, kind of demonic creatures. Well, it's all the creatures that we see in the original movie. Largely, we get like almost a little cameo from all of them. They're all in the background in some capacity. It's weird snake women. It's creepy cat monsters. It's just goblins and little demons and shit. Like it's
There's a part in this one where there's just like the one little guy who just like comes out from behind the pillar. He just goes like,
yeah,
Just
like
waving
waggles his
his
tongue.
hand.
yeah, just like waggles his arms, just goes, it just cuts away. It's so funny.
It's awesome. And
Their leader or whatever is just like this little old man who rides around on a unicycle.
yeah,
He's excellent.
he's so good. Like the whole time they're talking, he's just kind of like unicycling in a circle.
Yeah.
Like not even in a circle around D to be
No,
intimidating.
he's just
his own
doing
little loop.
loop-de-loops while he's like monologuing. It's so funny.
It's great. Yeah, this kind of weird, kooky old man who's like the head of them, and wearing like circus garb.
Yeah.
Like weird, like gothic circus garb that looks dope. On a goofy unicycle, and it's so much more fun than just D entering the castle and then.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, like in the original, like D enters the castle and he's attacked by all of these creatures, but we don't know what they are. They're just things that are there.
Yeah.
And like even Flash Gordon says, throw him into the Groggle flank pit, you know, and it's like, and he goes into the pit and he fights the Groggle flank, you know,
Yeah, sure,
like,
right.
and like there's something there, but in the original, like it's just being attacked by these things and they're cool and I like them, but like what does it mean? What's going on? Why do I care? But here, like, yeah, they're given a name, they're given a leader, and they're in the background, and they give the world character and life.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that leader rules.
He's so
dude.
great, yeah.
He's the best.
His little unicycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, he should be their leader, and I liked that scene a lot because that's also where we get Laser Christ. It's where
Yes, that's the introduction of Laser Christ.
yeah, it's where we get a lot of things, but they're guarding the vampire and his girlfriend, in their carriage while the day carries through, so they can progress again at night. And
they hire out some of them to like be henchmen.
to guard them
to
as
be
mercenaries.
bodyguards, yeah.
And yeah, I like that too, that they are mercenaries. They aren't just like the thralls of the vampire lord.
Yeah.
Because it also like kind of humanizes our vampire lord. Like he's hired them out. He's paying for them. They're not just his demonic thrall.
Yeah.
They're in it for a price. And it's funny that makes him look like a better person, but it does. And you know, so the old guy reinforces that by saying like, yo, he's paying me this much. If you could double that, you can walk through. We don't care. And I like that. I like the earnesty of that. Like they're fucking creepy snake women and goofy goblins and horrible demon monsters lurking in the shadows. But they're like, yo, dude, if you're gonna like pay for our lunch, you can just pass. you know, like you feel free. Like, you know, we don't care. Like,
Yeah,
we're not
hire
evil.
through
Yeah.
and through.
Yeah, we're just trying to live. Like, you know, it's hard out here for a pimp. Like for any, you know, for anyone.
It's hard out here for nasty little freaks.
Yeah, it's hard out here for nasty little freaks. You know, as a nasty little freak myself, I find that very relatable, and I liked that a lot. And it did make the vampire lord a lot more a lot less evil.
Sure.
And so they pass through them, and then we see that the chariot, the carriage, not the chariot. Chariots are different. The carriage is guarded by his core henchmen,
Yeah.
real guys, and we introduce them, and they've got a hell of a look about them. And it does that usual kind of anime thing where each one has a really weird look. Like I was saying earlier,
Yeah.
they got a weird look, and you get to kind of figure out what their powers are. I love that shit. I really do.
They're great too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get the shapeshifter, you get the werewolf,
And then there's Benj.
and Benj. Yeah,
Of course, Benj.
me. I make a cameo
Yeah.
in this movie.
Yeah, Benj is he's like a like shadow ninja.
Yeah.
Which is cool. He can like teleport between shadows and like turn his body into like a void until like there's one part where Borgoff like shoots at him and he's just like meh.
So like he's wearing one of those like Cirque du Soleil kind of outfits where it's like just one big square piece of cloth.
Yeah.
Like if he spreads his arms and legs, he just
like a
makes
flying
big
squirrel.
square. Yeah, like a flying squirrel. And so yeah, like he'll and he's got like the white mask. And if he lifts his arms out or whatever, like the claw, we see this a couple of times because like the Vampire Lord does this as well, where they sort of translate just beautifully like black cloth into shadows and back. Oh, it's always a gorgeous transition. There's that shot earlier where the vampire hunters like think they've got a drop on the carriage and they hop down and like the Gringus or whatever the fuck his name is with the big hammer.
Nolt.
Yeah, like my Gringus. He hits it. He hits the carriage with his hammer and it just becomes a cloth cape.
Like a big cloth
It's
cape, yeah.
Awesome.
It's so fucking cool. And like the transition is beautiful. And then like he appears in Noit's shadow and like stabs him in the back and then disappears again.
He stabs the shadow.
Oh, he stabbed the shadow
and
and
it
it
kills
hurts
Nolt.
Yeah, kills Nolt. That's so fucking cool. I love all that stuff with like shadow play and like how their cloaks become that. And it's so very like traditionally vampiric.
So you're saying
because
that
they're
you're a
lords of the
Ben.
night.
You're saying that you're a Benj fan.
Yeah, I'm a big Bench fan.
Yeah, I
mean,
mean,
so
I'm
am
also
I.
I'm also a Benj
Yeah.
fan.
Oh yeah. And yeah, that whole idea of like vampires transforming and morphing into creatures of the night, allows for that like anime weird idea to fit right at home here. Like it works so well for like the dark gothic stuff where like his cloak becomes a shadow.
Also, this shit is set like 10,000 years in the future, so anything's possible.
Anything,
Yeah.
yeah. You name
Truly.
it. Have
I'm
fun.
not questioning any of this
Nope,
shit.
go wild. And well, that's great. You
Yeah.
know, like, it's so nice to be so free, creatively in that world and just to enjoy the cool shit that's going on. It's the same kind of feeling I got, like, when I was a kid and I had, like, the Star Wars movies on VHS, Like, it's like, oh, look at all the weird worlds and monsters and creatures, and you just get lost in it. I still live for that shit.
Absolutely. I think that's a perfect analog. Because, like, it is a very fantastic setting. But,
Yeah,
like,
totally.
It's very self-contained, and, like, there is such an internal logic to it that it works. Fits together.
Yeah, so well. And it's just nice at the end of like a long day to like sit down and just get lost in a world like that. And so cool and fun. So yeah, we've got Benj. And he's goofy but fun and still cool. And then there's the lady
Caroline.
God, her name is just Caroline.
Yep.
All right, yeah. Then there's Caroline, who is she looks like her outfit. I think I described it as like a
Eurovision.
Yeah, she looks like she's wearing. She's like up and ready for Eurovision, and her deal is that she can morph into inside of objects and manipulate them, which is super fucking cool.
Yeah, it's sick.
Yeah.
So like she first like leaps onto the carriage, and they're like, oh, or she's
Onto
standing
their
in front.
tank.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's standing in front of their tank, and it goes over her, and they're like, oh, did we hit her? And we see her like holding on to the underside of it as she like melts into it, and then like she basically can manipulate the whole tank at that point and just starts jetting out spikes
all on the inside. It's very cool.
It reminded me of like the liquid metal Terminator.
Yeah,
too.
very
Yep,
much.
definitely.
But like with that additional part where it's like she's sort of like a metal mancer, like she can just become it. But not just metal, as we see later on, she can do it with
When she
trees.
fights D in the forest, she does it with trees and stuff, and he thinks he kills her at first, but she's still alive. But he has to take a literal dirt nap because he got sick from being out in the sun too long, I guess. And yeah, so he had to dig himself a little hole and rest in it, and Caroline comes back and attacks Layla, who is there, And I love this part because Layla like takes out like a knife from her boot or whatever, because like she's dropped her gun. She like throws it and it like hits Caroline in the forehead. It's like sticking out of her head, and she's like, "Oh, haha! That cleared my head. It's time for me to do the same for you, or whatever." But then a bolt of lightning just comes out of nowhere and strikes the knife that's in her forehead. It just like blows her up. It's so funny. It's so good, just like out of nowhere.
What's fun is there's a couple of things you could go for that, right? Where it's like, first off, like, they have crosses, so I guess God exists in this universe. So maybe it's just a Deus Ex Machina. And the other thing too is,
man,
like,
if God exists in this universe, then he fucking hates everyone.
he's done a really bad job. Yeah, he's done a really bad job as God in that world. But the fun part is the other alternative, which I like more, is that Layla, because she has all this like future tech weapons, she just has like a knife that's capable of like
calling down a lightning strike.
Essentially it acts as a lightning rod, you know, and they're really high up. They're in like a tree. Cause, like,
well, yeah, I mean they are up in a tree, but it absolutely feels like a Deus Ex Machina, because it's like Layla would never, like, she's not equipped to defeat this creature, so she like futilely attempts to just like throw a knife into its face, and then surprise, lightning bolt. Well, other than Caroline, there's the third henchman whose name I don't remember, but he's a werewolf man. But not just a regular werewolf man. He also, when he transforms, he has a big wolf mouth that comes out of his chest and stomach.
Yeah.
Which is fun. One of the few disappointments in this movie for me is that, like, he and Dee don't really fight. Dee just, like, kind of kills him.
One hit.
Because it's like, we gotta move on. I was kind of hoping they would have their little fight, but
yeah,
alas.
because the design is so cool. With
It's cool, yeah, he's got the big
werewolf mouth and his chest.
It's one of the hokiest things in the movie.
The
but I
big
do
torso
agree.
mouth.
It is fun.
It's cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'd also be remiss if we didn't talk a little bit about Carmilla, the vampire queen lady or whatever.
Which is the castle that our
Yes.
antagonists at the time are off to.
The true Castlevania castle.
Yes.
Yeah.
The vampire lord and his girlfriend are trying to get there so they can use her spaceship to fly off to the city of the night in space, which I guess is just like a vampire city in the stars.
I love it.
I wish we would see some of that. That would be cool. We never do.
They never get there. Yeah.
So yeah, they go to Carmilla and she's like, "Oh, I'm not as evil as everybody says I am."
Ha ha ha.
And then surprise, she is. They're basically just doing like an Elizabeth Bathory thing. Like she needs to bathe in a young virgin's blood in order to be rejuvenated into life, and that's the stuff that just, like, for me, kind of drags a little bit in that third act.
Yeah.
It's not like conceptually
really
there's some
cool
cool stuff. It's just it's not as exciting as a lot of this other stuff in the movie. Like, it feels like it's kind of a little bit slower paced. And this movie's almost 2 hours long, so at that point I'm like, I need the intensity to keep up to carry me through to the end of this thing. I mean, there's some cool stuff, like when she turns into like a blood demon, is fun.
And the visuals throughout the whole time are really fucking good, at least. But
yeah,
I do really.
She has a bunch of illusion magic.
Yeah, that's what I love too. Is that, like, every character who enters the castle encounters her in some form of illusion.
Yeah,
and we always see her in her most regal form when she introduces herself first to the vampire and his girlfriend. Like, she welcomes them in, and she makes them see everything as it is all fine, and they're ready to go. She's got the spaceship ready, and the next morning they'll fly them, or the next night they'll fly them out or whatever. And as Dee enters, he's brought into he's given a vision of his own mother, which I like, which gives you a little bit of his backstory, about as much as like a cowboy with no name should have, where you kind of see, like, oh, he's you know, like he has this inner conflict because, and I love this is like it's related to the two of them because like a vampire is born from like a regular human and a vampire.
Yeah.
And so like in this illusion, like even though it isn't real, he gets a moment to kind of speak with his mother and reach out to her. And then Layla, you know, sees her younger self. There, she sees, you know, like
at her mother's grave, who was captured by vampires and all that good shit.
And she has that, you know, that moment earlier where Dee is like kind of taking his turn nap, and she says like, I don't want to die alone, you know.
Yeah, I want to be mourned after I want.
You know, it's that moment of like one lonely soul to another, and I found it like, you know, as much as like I could be really moved by that, I found it pretty moving, and it's done tastefully too. You know, like it's nice and quiet and philosophical and slow. You know, it's the same kind of stuff I love in like Ghost in the Shell and whatnot, where it's just, you know, two characters just kind of sitting and taking a moment after all the action to pontificate. And then, so she encounters her younger self. Footnote on that for later. Dee inevitably just like cuts through his memory.
Yeah,
you know, he has
and
no
breaks
time for
the
that.
spell.
And breaks the spell. And it is then shown that the actual Camilla is a husk of a corpse in the coffin, and that her kind of ghostly, her ghastly spirit is sort of projecting this imagery. And I love that conceptually. I think that's really cool.
To get at like the young girl or whatever's blood, so she can be reborn physically.
Yeah. So she tricks the vampire guy into kind of leaving her alone, and
so she can get at that good sweet blood.
Yeah, and so she sucks the blood, or she draws the blood out of the girl, which is really cool. I love that, how she's bit by what she thinks is her boyfriend, and then he kind of disappears, and it's revealed that's an illusion. She falls to the ground, and the blood seeps up the steps to the coffin, and like starts pouring in. I thought that was great, how it's like flowing up the steps.
Yeah, that was
looks
cool.
It's
amazing. It's really well animated too. And as the coffin, you know, like you said, like kind of Elizabeth Bathory style, like fills with blood, and she is rejuvenated. And then she and Dee have a nice fight.
Well, yeah, Dee interrupts the ritual, so she doesn't like fully rejuvenate yet. So she kind of like attacks him as like a demon made of blood, sort of.
Yeah, this like blood corpse is like crawling down the side. It's super fucking cool.
And you know, so he kills her, and she's like, but our vampire spirits are eternal, so we can never truly die. And he's like, ha, bitch, you about to get that suck. And then his hand face sucks up her soul.
He does the suck.
He does the suck, which I guess is the whole purpose of that hand face, huh? So he can actually like really kill vampires.
Yeah.
He sucks up their souls. Do you all have anything else you want to talk about? We should probably rate this.
I think the music with the score was really good. There's a lot of choral segments. Like I love when Dee's like crossing the bridge. There's like a lot of like ambient wailing. Like there's a lot of choral like oh, you know, kind of stuff that's like really cool and baleful. I love that. He fights the vampire guy afterwards, and it ends up being Layla who basically takes the ring off of the young girl who's deceased, and she throws it at Dee, and I love the shot because like he's just about to kill the vampire, and he stabs him, and he purposely misses his heart. And he pulls the blade back, and he puts it down to the ground just as the ring lands at his feet, and the ring spins up his blade,
rolls
and into
up his
hand.
blade. Yeah.
And it's hilarious, but also fucking rad.
And he's just like, yeah, I can take this back to her father to prove that she's dead. I guess I don't need her body. Because the whole reason they fight in the first place is because Dee's like, no, I gotta take her body back to her dad. And the vampire's like, nah, I gotta take her on the spaceship. And then he's just like, okay, yeah, I guess I can just take her ring. That's chill. And that's it. And he takes her ring, and the vampire takes her body onto the spaceship and shoots off into space, never to be seen again. And that's the movie.
Well, with one last caveat, not caveat, sorry, wrong term, but one last aspect, and that is...
Yes, the little epilogue.
In the little epilogue, we see a casket being lowered into the ground. I think we all thought at first that it's supposed to be...
Yeah, we assume it's supposed to be What's-Her-Face, you know...
Yeah, like they're doing a burial for her, even though like
Yeah,
her
They don't
body's
have her
been
body,
taken to space.
but you do it.
They're doing a burial without, but we were wrong. And we see a young blonde girl about the same age as the girl in Layla's vision. She approaches Dee, and she says, "I think you knew my grandmother."
Yeah, Dee's standing off under a tree, like, separate from the rest of the
lone
mourners.
cowboy shit.
Yeah. And, yeah, she runs up to him. She's like, "Oh, did you know my grandmother, Layla?" And it's like, "Oh, this is many years in the future." And he came back. She's like, "Yeah, well, I came to pay my respect. She was afraid there would be nobody to mourn her when she died. But, you know,
Here I am mourning.
here. But I'm glad to see that she was wrong, because there's obviously, like, her whole family.
Yeah, she had a
there,
full
too.
life and
Yeah.
was loved. She
Exactly,
found love.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's so fucking cool because, like, I think an American film would have had to have a kiss or something and have Layla and Dee and, like, Shaq, Layla and Dee together.
Leave it open for
Yeah,
a
and
sequel,
instead,
too.
exactly, yeah, some bullshit there. And instead, like, they're really classy about it. And they go their separate ways, and we just reveal that she still got that off screen, you know, like at some point she must have found love and, you know, like a community and a family.
Yeah, she had children and grandchildren, and
yeah.
then Dee came back to her funeral. It was nice.
And died surrounded by people who loved them, and Dee was there to witness that. And I think that's the best fucking happy ending and bow you could put on this movie. It's great. It's fucking great. Yeah, and the fact, too, that, like, it legitimately caught all of us by surprise. Like, we just thought, like, oh, yeah, they're just doing a burial for the girl. It's such a fucking cool, like, clean transition into the end. So, like, yeah, like, there's a bit of a wobble, like, you know, in the narrative dance, you know, like, in the latter half. But I just think it fucking really nails the landing.
Why don't you add a rating to that?
Yeah.
This was your pick. So.
You know, I think this could become a 5. With a few more watches, I was just so enamored by the visuals, but I get so overwhelmed by it and like just trying to take in like all the technical aspects of it and like, oh my god, how did they do this with like cells? How did they do this by hand? That it's hard to say. I'm gonna give it a really strong 4.5. Like I'm hedging 5, but I want to give it a few more watches to see like where it's gonna sit. Maybe it stays, maybe it goes down even. Who knows? But for right now, coming off of it hot, really strong 4.5.
Hell yeah. Well, this was one of those cases where I was a little nervous going in, revisiting a movie that I enjoyed growing up. But I was glad to see that it holds up pretty well. It's a pretty solid movie, and the animation, like you said, is fantastic. It's really confidently made, and again, there's a clarity of purpose where even though the plot is a little thin, like, it has a direct through line throughout that carries you throughout. So I'm going to give it a solid 4 out of 5. Definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. It's the rare anime that hit me just right. And, yeah, simple, like, non-convoluted storyline with a lot of really cool, like, set pieces and character designs and creatures and stuff. Drags a little bit in the third act, and where it starts to feel its length. But overall, I really, really liked this one, and would definitely happily revisit it sometime. So I'm going to give it a strong 4.5 out of 5 as well.
Nice.
So Vampire Hunter D, Bloodlust, gets an average of 4.3 out of 5 pods.
Honestly, I'm almost more happy that you had a great time with it, Tease, than my own personal enjoyment. Because like I just really love like enjoying things with friends, and like I don't want to hold that on friends. Like if a friend isn't enjoying something, that's fine. But like, yeah, it's nice, you know. Like it feels good.
Every now and then, I like an anime.
Yeah.
Every now and then when there's a good one.
It's a good reminder to me too that I do think that you will really like Bebop at some point.
I'm sure I will. I just need to watch it because I need to give Evangelion another shot. There's a few
same.
There's a few
it's
animes
for me where I started. Yeah.
There's a few animes that I need to do the thing. But
Bebop is a lot more accessible, fortunately.
Yeah, and
thankfully.
And I like a good anime when it's good. Anyway, next week is another new film, our last of the first half of 2022. It's The Black Phone, the Ethan Hawke horror movie directed by Scott Derrickson, based on a short story by Stephen King's son.
Are you guys excited about this one?
I have no expectations for this one.
There too.
Yeah.
I think
The trailer isn't doing a lot for me.
I think Ethan Hawke will probably steal the show, but
Ethan
he's
Hawke
been in
looks
a
like-
lot of mid horror movies in the past decade.
Ethan Hawke looks like he's hamming it up, and that gives me a little bit of hope. But this is a Scott Derrickson film. The other horror movies he's done, like The Exorcism of Emily Rose and Sinister, have been extremely mid, so I'm going in expecting something that is inoffensive but not very good.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at going into it. The mask is neat. It's a fun design, but it doesn't put fear in my heart or anything, Like, it's kind of neat.
Well, we shall
I'm
sure
curious.
see. I think this is the right film to have zero expectations for. That way, if it's good,
I hope it's good.
it's at least a surprise.
Yeah.
I'm certainly not rooting against this movie.
No,
but I'm not rooting for it.
no, me
either.
either. But it'll be what it is. So hopefully, it'll at least be an interesting episode. Tune in next week to find out. Until
Will it be
then,
the black phone or will it be the black flop? Damn. All right. So this week is brought to you by Bing, 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 Bing. Keith. Thank you so much, Keith. We love you here at the podcast. We don't have a choice. We have to love you because you're a sponsor. If we show no love for Keith, we are bled upon the tree of thorns. But when we love Keith, which is always, we love Keith. Thank you, Keith, for sponsoring this episode, and please do remember that we do love you authentically and really, and we're not just saying this because you're a sponsor, even though we have to say this because you're a sponsor. Keith, please don't put us back upon the tree of thorns and pain.
as the saying goes, loving Keith keeps a smile on my teeth.
Thanks, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. That'll do it for us this week. If you like the show, you can leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. While we're thanking people like Keith, let's take a moment to thank our honorary pod boys, Sam Simon and Zach Confer. If you want to be like them, you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/podpeoplepod. We're on Twitter at podpeoplepod and at letterboxd.com/podpeoplepod, where you'll find a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those reviews. I'm on Twitter at SomeSpookySnake.
I'm on Twitter at Mr. Sheets.
You can find me on Twitter at Twitter via very occasionally Lightarc Studios, but you know what? Really, you can find way more of my stuff just at DreadXP or DreadXP Games. Either of those Twitter accounts. Frankly, I'm doing a shout out for that instead because, like, they post pictures of my dog, so I should where I don't, like, also go to the DreadXP Discord where I'm pretty active, and again, you can pretty regularly see pictures of my beautiful one-eyed and deaf pupper Piglet, and meals. And I'm just gonna devote, I do games, dreadxp.com or whatever, you can see, like, some of the games I'm working on, but really, it's all about Piglet. You can go check out the DreadXP Twitter for, photos of her from time to time, along with my meals that I cook and plate. And she is adorable and a sweetheart. And yeah, if you go to the DreadXP
And
Discord,
asleep on my foot right now.
she's asleep on his foot
She's
right
asleep
now.
on my foot right now.
She's such an angel and just a sweet little piggy angel, and I love her so much. And you will too. So yeah, go check her out on any of those platforms. Feel free to introduce yourself and say hi to me as well. On the DreadXP Discord. I'm there. We do movie nights. It's very fun. And that's it for me.
Well, thanks for listening. Until next time, why sip when you can suck?